Honored.
Definitely nobody else has been on here 4 times. So you've surpassed everybody by far. You've doubled everybody else's. But again, it's one of the most listened to ones. So it's good. I like it. I think today in society, people are craving more openness in regards to sexuality and not condemning it than ever before, and more direction in it, because it's like, oh, we got more access to pornography, more access to all of these things than we ever had before. But like, what do we do with it? All of that information, like what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. How do you talk about it? How do you, it's like, you go into a room and it's funny because these are the things I think about.
The way your body language just was, I'm like, oh, what is this?
Like, I'll go, like if I'm flying in and I'm landing in an airport or I go into a hotel, I'm like, I wonder how many people, or like I'm driving through the city, I'm like, I wonder how many people are getting a blowjob in that building right now. Like those are the things I think about. Or like I go somewhere and it's like all these people that are all buttoned up, and I'm like, I wonder how many of these people watch porn this week.
Oh, my mind can't help but go anywhere. Like I look at people and I'm like, what are their kinks? What are their traumas?
Same. Like I'm just always like, like I'm checking into a hotel. I'm like, how many people are having sex right now? There's 300 rooms. How many people are in? Like those are the things I always think about. I think it's hilarious. But in that world, I think that bringing more light to it and not such taboo is then how we can teach a healthy, because that's one of the things I think about now, and I not worry about by any means. My network's so vast, I'll be able to obviously help Sloan through that age, especially between you and Heather. Oh God.
Are you sure you've got the right kind of support community for her?
But like, I think that, you want as a parent, like I don't want to condemn anything, because then of course we're going to feed the thing we condemn. And so you want to steward it in the right direction. And so I think it is important to have healthy females, to have. So the real answer is yes, I do have the right network of people. Like we're just making a joke, but, I think bringing light to it and teaching a healthy boundaries around all types of that stuff is super important, or else we are going to create a generation of kids that only jerk off to porn and don't have intimacy and don't touch people and don't want to have sex, and then they're disconnected from their bodies, and then they have ejaculation issues, and they, all these kinds of things. Summed up half my clientele. And let's begin. So 2 questions then. We're going to go with that. One, how do you think a potentially healthy way to teach children is about this whole, not necessarily BDSM world, but the world of their sexuality? And then the next thing we'll talk about is how you start to help men with that stuff.
Yeah. And I think with kids, it's about, it's not really so much how you treat sexuality, particularly. It's how you teach them to communicate, how you teach them to withhold their boundaries, how you teach them to understand their own preferred limits, and then I'm not talking obviously sexual ones because they don't have those yet. Yeah. But when we have a confidence within us at a very young age, and confidence is built going out and building a fort and nobody's teaching you how to do it. Confidence is built, taking the little boat, going and doing things on your own and figuring it out along the way. You start to build that self-trust. And when you trust yourself, you get to trust your intuition and you get to trust your gut instinct. And so when we allow our children to learn how to trust themselves, learn how to communicate their needs and their wants and not shame them for it, and then just simply having a healthy outlook yourself on sex, because your children, if you've created this open line of communication, which somehow I did with my kids when I was a drunk, I don't know how, but I did. Because each one of them came to me and told me when, about them virginity and sex and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't shame it. I was just like, okay, so you lost your virginity at 13. Okay. Yeah. That's fine. Did you use protection? Yes, Mom, I did. Because I did show them how to. I used a banana and a condom and everything. And I showed them how to do it. And each one of them used a condom when they had sex that first time. Yeah. Because I didn't make it weird or anything. It was just like, listen, I'm not going to act like this isn't going to happen for you. Eventually it will. Here's how you use a condom. And they were all like, "Ma," but guess what? It stuck.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah. So it's really just about having a great relationship with your children and teaching them that they matter, that they get to trust themselves, that they get to make decisions for their body for themselves. And trusting yourself as a parent and trusting your child, not worrying like, are they going to make the right choice? Let me swoop in and make the choice for them. Well, now you've removed their decision making and you've taken away from them trusting themselves. You don't want to swoop in and make the choice for them. You just want to support them in them making the choice for themselves. Sure. So, I hope that kind of summed up, when it comes to sex, but understanding that, if our sexuality starts to be created as soon as we find that pleasure spot. And I feel as though diapers actually kind of hinder that. I don't know if what your diaper experience is. I assume that you've changed diapers. With some dads don't.
Definitely changed.
And
way more than.
What do they do as soon as you take the diaper off? Their hand goes down there and they kind of violently touch themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And what do? We take their hand away and go, oh, don't hurt yourself. We assume they are hurting themselves. But babies have a much thicker layer of skin. They have layers of fat. They're just reaching for it. And it's natural for us as humans to go for that spot and discover our pleasure. And at some point, we discover it. One of my daughters discovered it extremely young. Another one discovered it a little bit later. And, once we start discovering that, if we as parents walk in on it, this recently happened with my granddaughter. Let me tell you the story.
Tell me.
Cute.
Yeah.
So my son-in-law, he's sweet as can be. I love my son-in-laws. I'm that mother-in-law that I'm just like, yay. So he walks in on my 5-year-old granddaughter, just doing some stuff. And his initial reaction was,
yeah.
Oh, okay. And he just backed out and shut the door and he goes, Brianna, my daughter. He's like, go handle that. And my daughter came in and she's just like, she goes, well, Daddy didn't know what to do. This is something that you get to do with yourself. She talked her into it. And, I was like so happy because they took a situation that sometimes can create shame in a child very young before they even remember that that's where the shame came from. And so they go through the rest of their life just feeling a little bit shameful about their own personal pleasure. And she got to, handle that in a way where she sat down and she talked to her and said, this is your body. You touch it however you want to, but this is a private moment between you and you. And you just make sure that door is shut. And Daddy knows now not to open that door if you have it shut. Yeah. And that's showing her that, what you're doing is perfectly normal. It's totally okay.
Boundaries and it's respected.
We're going to respect your space while you're doing it. And I was like, yay! I was so happy for that. So a little antidote.
I love that. Yeah. Because a lot of shame comes from that later in life.
Yeah. And usually that shame for our sexuality starts somewhere in childhood and teenage years. The messages that we receive or the responses we receive to our own expression of sexuality.
Yeah. So I love the way you described courage and building courage. I mean, you summed it up so perfectly. So I love it because it's just doing, like, the one that stuck with me is like building the fort in the woods and figuring out how to build the fort in the woods. Like, you build courage by doing, you build courage by failing and doing it again. Like, again, it comes back to, there's principles in life. There's simplicity in life. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need 5 books on how to build courage in your children.
Yeah. You really don't. Just let them be kids.
Just let them be kids and just keep doing the shit. Like, I mean, that's how I built courage, taking the dirt bike out, doing dumb shit, doing it again, like whatever. Like, and yeah, it's just interesting because every time I turn around, it seems like it's reaffirming that. Like, just be a kid and you'll build courage. Just be a kid and, like, get them off the fucking iPads. Get them off the phone. Let them experience life. You're not going to build courage by playing the game on the thing. You got to be in the real world.
You're going to gain a lot of anxiety. You're going to gain a lot of insecurity. That's what you're going to gain by being on that too much. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having some fun with it and letting it be a distraction here and there. But we got to get our kids out playing in the yard, get them out riding the bikes and doing the things that kids naturally want to do. But, we've given them a drug early in life, the iPad. And of course they're going to fall into that.
Of course. I mean, you do, not you, but everybody. You fall into it. It's why I've taken a break from Instagram.
I've been up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching TikTok. Oh yeah.
That's why I took a break. That's why I got off it for a while. And I'm still going to probably take another 2 weeks because I'm just like, you know what? I feel good. My mind feels good. My dopamine isn't exhausted at the end of the day. Like, I'm clearer. A month break, maybe 6 weeks I'm going to do, and then I'll back on it for the rest of the year. Same thing at the beginning of the year next year.
Yeah.
And, people are like, oh, you were gaining a lot of followers. You shouldn't stop doing that. My mind is way more important to me than a fucking follower on Instagram. I don't give a shit.
Absolutely.
Like, that shit matters way more to me. Was I present with my daughter? What was I doing? Like, I was spending too much time on it. She noticed that. Fuck it. That day, I was like, delete.
Yeah.
Told my assistant, go post something on there that says like, hey, we'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks. I encourage you to take a break too.
Yep.
Deleted all the apps.
I actually hired my daughter to be my content creator and do all my stuff for me. That way I don't have to go on there.
That's awesome. See, that's amazing. All right. So cool. So now we promised everybody we're going to talk about kink and tantra.
Yes. And how those blend together, because some people are very, very confused at how those things even exist together.
Yes. So educate people. Pretend people don't know a lot, because I don't think people do really know a lot about that world, and you just know what you're told in movies and TV, and that's not correct.
That's true. And thank you for that, because sometimes I forget and I'm just like, everybody knows what I know, right?
I do that with my work all the time too. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, that's not common knowledge. They're like, not at all. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
So, Tantra itself is, it's a series of practices and principles to bring you to a place of higher enlightenment. That's the intention of Tantra.
So not a hand job.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not code word for escorting or code word for any of that.
Tricked all these years. Damn it.
Yeah.
Should have went to Burning Man.
But an escort or a sensual massage practitioner can use Tantra to enhance their practices they already have.
Correct. So I was just making a joke, people.
But it's a good point, because a lot of people they hear Tantra and they think only sex.
Yes.
And Tantra itself is not exclusive of sex, but it is not only about sex. It's like saying that the Bible is only about Moses. And it's like, well, no, Moses is a part of the Bible, but there's a whole lot
of other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And, to sum it up, the best way is that it's learning how to live more aware, more present, and more meditative, being more mindful with everything, just being so much more emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually involved in your life in the present moment. That's kind of the ultimate goal when it comes to our enlightenment, because what's better than that than to be able to enjoy and be grateful for and see the beauty in every single moment that you're in. So that's the intention of Tantra, is to kind of become that, or not become that, but we are already that. It's seeing that it exists inside of us and being able to find it.
Sure. And then I think my question there is then like, so it's been practiced for many, 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 many years,
over 5,000.
Yeah. And at one point it was reserved only for royalty.
Yes.
Right. So there's a lot of power in that. And correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I think there is a level of detachment from I need to think how to word this. There's a level of detachment from the physical arousalness of the physical and dropping into like the energetic component of the whole, to where it's like men are very visual. So like if I see you naked, not getting aroused just because of the naked body. It is just a beautiful thing that I'm observing the naked body, but I'm taking in the beauty of you and the flower that's outside. And like that, is that more along the lines of like dropping into that Tantra realm? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's seeing each and every human being as their own individual piece of art.
Yeah.
In their way. Each person has their own universe. You have your own universe and you're the center of it. I have my own universe and I'm the center of it. And we're just walking around all these universes existing together within the universe.
Right.
And so it's about dropping in. It's like, okay, if you get a really nice sports car, I'm talking,
Ferrari. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Let's talk Ferrari. Are you going to be like, notice that paint job? Pretty good paint job, isn't it? Yeah. You like that red, don't you?
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
we're like, look at that horsepower underneath. Yeah. Look at,
That's such a good way to describe it.
Yeah. And, since this is a men's podcast primarily, that's how I describe to my male clients. I often use golfing or car references. But that's how it is. Tantra is, traditional sex that's taught through porn, how a lot of us are learning. That is, look at the paint. And Tantra says, no, look at how well they manufactured every single bolt that is holding that engine together. How freaking beautiful is that? Every one of them has been polished and stained, and seeing all the intricacies of the beautiful artwork that is the Ferrari. And that's what Tantra is. It's seeing all of those parts inside of us. We think the bolts don't matter on the engine, but in Tantra, they're beautiful. These little parts inside of us that we seem to think that don't matter in there, they're actually sometimes running the show, and they do matter, and we take a look at them. And nothing is unseen in Tantra.
See, that's, I think, what I was trying to explain, but you just did it so much better. I wonder why, because it's your job. That's exactly what so in that world, then how can the kink blend with the let's talk kink. Let's put Tantra aside for the second. We'll blend them later. Explain kink. I also think before we do that, we're all over the place. Let's back it up one second.
ADHD,
yeah,
okay.
It's okay. So let's back it up 1 second. I love that you described that sometimes it's running the show, because I think we don't necessarily understand, without me getting into everything I do, but when there's tension on the spinal system, it will literally put you into fight or flight. That fight or flight will put you into your primitive brain. Your primitive brain is designed to fight, feed, and fuck. That's survival. Let's look at society. You're sold food on every fucking corner. Violence everywhere, whether it's wars or TV or sports or whatever.
Or just simple division.
Division that's being created. And then you are condemned sexuality through religion, and then sold it in all the other places in the world. Like every other avenue.
Sexuality shows up. It shows up as anger and aggression.
There you go. Which feeds the brain, that the brain stem,
or the system of that,
of everything, the fight,
mode.
Feed, and fuck. Right. So that's the cycle of what happens in the world. And by bringing light, and so bringing Tantra in essence, or bringing that to the existence that, hey, these are the things that are operating and running the show. Like most men esteem for power and money and X, Y, and Z because they want to peacock and present themselves to the most viable woman. That's why they want the money and power and all of these things most of the time. Right. And so I think it's interesting that when you can bring, like, holy shit, if I'm working with someone like you, or I'm working with a true Tantra practitioner, I'm going to bring the things out of the shadows that are actually causing me to make these certain decisions in life that maybe I don't like that decision in life, that I didn't realize was making me cause that decision in life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm actually, working with one of my clients on that, when he first came to see me, his issue was that, and it was funny how we started out, because basically I was like, I can't work with you because you're not coming to me with the right intentions. And it was like, whoo, those intentions switched around real fast. And he was just like, wait a minute. I like what you're saying. I like your rejection of me because I was rejecting a part of him that he didn't want in his life. He was acting out sexually, from his marriage, and it wasn't serving him. And his penis was telling him that story because it was no longer serving him, and he was having sexual issues. And I was like, well, maybe it's because you're resistant to the fact that, or not resistant, but you have resistance in your body because you're doing something that steps outside of your own morals and ethics, and it's not feeling good for you. And so it's kind of shutting things down. And that's when he was like, oh, like, wait a minute. I didn't know I needed this answer, but this is the answer that I've needed. And, and we've actually worked together a lot over the last 2 months. And, that's what we've been discovering, where he thought that he had a little bit of trauma, but not a whole lot. When he started telling me his childhood story and how, his relation was with his mother and with his father and all of that comes with it, I was like, well, there's actually a whole lot to unpack here.
I just had such a similar situation in the office. I had a man brought to me who was a firefighter in 9/11. And he's like, I don't have very much trauma. I was on ground zero for 6 months, and a lot of my friends died, but I don't have much trauma. your body's telling me something else. I'm like, wait a second. And so like, it's peeling it back and gaining the trust and explain, you know what I mean? Like, but it was just funny how like, I'm like, oh, I used to be like that before I started, doing a lot of the different works, but it's funny because it's like, I don't have any trauma. I'm like, sir, you were there when the building fell down.
Right? With your friends inside of it.
Yes. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't I'm not
have
saying
to be
that it's
strong.
Right.
And I'm using the whatever these are, fingers, strong, because that's not strong, but it's what men have been taught is strong.
Right. And it's like, it's okay to feel those feelings. I'm not saying they're going to control you or anything. It's okay. It's just, hey, this is an experience I had. Let's go through whatever I need to do. That's part of what we were talking about in the last episode. Like sometimes I get to shut it down, move on, shut it down, move on, and I mean, he's doing good, but still it was just funny. Cause like, we don't necessarily realize things are, and then, I adjust the spine and some emotions come up and then he starts crying in the office. And then it's like, I'm like, see, this is good. Like we're getting rid of the stored shit.
Yeah.
But anyways.
And you're so right. Where, a lot of times people won't realize that there is trauma that is there. And like with this client in particular, our first couple of sessions, we were sitting and it was 3 hours of just basically talk therapy. Yeah. And then I was like, I want to do a little practice with you. And we cuddled and he was little spoon. How triggering it was for him to be held by a woman. And, we're just lying there, just cuddling. That's all we're doing. And he just like the resistance and he's talking it through, he's talking to me while we're lying there. And he's like, this is what's going through my mind. And I don't know why, but this feels uncomfortable, but I'm feeling comforted, but it's uncomfortable at the same time. And so we're live, like, which is what I enjoy doing is going through this live, and letting all of it out. And it's not about me. And this is where seeing a woman can sometimes be really beneficial for a man, because I'm not going to jump in and fix. I'm just going to hold you and let you feel it and let you talk. And I'm going to be here and we're going to be okay. And you're still going to be loved and you're still okay in this world. And that's all I give. And, I think that sometimes we overcomplicate this process of letting our traumas come out and think that it has to be this long drawn out process and we have to see a therapist and write these journal things. And sometimes it's just being in a situation where you can feel it and be okay and have somebody else tell you that you're going to be okay. We're actually pretty intelligent when it comes to figuring ourselves out if we're curious in that way. Yep. People who aren't curious, well, they don't want to go down that road anyways. But when you become curious of your inner workings, all it takes is somebody opening the door. You're going to walk through it.
Right.
You don't have to push somebody through that door.
Right. And I think this is part of my, in the world of the healing world, my goal is to always empower people, not create hostages for the healing modality.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hostages for the healing modality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done that in society. And I'm like, we are not serving people by doing that.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
My intention with all my clients is to be their space of comfort and where they can come and be in surrender and be vulnerable, but not dependent.
Yes. And I'm here if you need me.
Right.
Push the system as hard as you fucking can, because that's what I want you to do. And if you push it too hard, I'm still here. But let's go. I don't want dependence.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what makes a lot of the work you do special, is you're not, creating dependence.
Yeah.
You're creating free thinking, powerful human beings that are taking their power back, that are creating the life they want from this new found clarity.
Yeah. And I find that a lot of that starts out in that realm of kink. When it comes back around to that kink and tantra together.
Awesome. I love it.
Just to clarify the difference between kink, fetishes, BDSM. Kink is your umbrella. BDSM falls underneath that. Fetishes are a kink that you require a little bit more often. It's something that it doesn't always have to be a need to get aroused, but like a foot fetish would be, sure, I can have sex and everything, but if she puts her feet on my face while we're having sex, oh my God, it's a certain kind of pleasure that you can't receive without that thing. That's a fetish. A kink is, I like this. This thing it's an alternative to our regular sex, or really everybody's kinky.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah, everybody's got something.
If you're not doing something alternative in your sex life, you're not listening to this.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
My fellow kinksters. And BDSM is bondage, discipline, domination, submission, and sadism and masochism. And that falls under the umbrella of kink. It's a part of kink.
Right.
But not everybody who has a kink is into BDSM. Not everybody who has a kink is it a fetish for them. So kink is your umbrella and those fall under it. So with that being said.
And there's hundreds of thousands of kinks.
Oh, yeah. And more coming.
Yeah.
More coming.
Yeah.
Foot fetish actually is the biggest one. You know what the official name for foot fetish is? Podophilia.
I have a friend who's going to listen to this podcast and they would have known that. Shout out to that friend.
You know, the thing that I hate about that is what it sounds like if you say it too fast.
Oh my God. That went right over my head.
The most common fetish out there amongst men is podophilia. And everybody be like, well, that makes sense with the
Oh my God. This one's going to blow up.
Podophilia, not pedophilia.
Yeah. Jesus. That's crazy. Now that I think
When
about it.
I saw that word, I was like, really? For the most common?
I wonder why that's the most common.
You know, I have my theory.
Let's hear it.
Total theory.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Total theory. From my own little world and experiences. We develop kinks often, almost all the time. Like it's predominant. We will build our kinks in our childhood. It's something we've seen in our childhood, done or experienced. Now, our kink may not look exactly like what happened in the childhood, but it's a derivative from that. You know, sometimes it's a little later in life that we'll develop a kink, but oftentimes it's our first 16 years, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So if you think of a little boy getting his first bout of, oh, something turned me on. Imagine how short he is. And what is he often very close to? Feet.
Sure.
So my theory is that men are developing this fetish when they're at a young age, maybe sitting on the floor when mom has her friends over, maybe going with mom to one of my clients. Actually, this was the root of his foot fetish was he knew it. He's like, yeah, I went with my mom. I was probably about 7 years old. I went to the nail salon. She was getting her feet done. And there was this woman sitting next to her. And for some reason, her feet were just like gorgeous. And that was his first recollection of having an arousal.
It doesn't do it. That's not it's just not my kink. You know what I mean? Like the feet is not my kink. Now, like if I'm, if my partner's like, hey, I like it, that's part of the give and take of a relationship. And then I will get, it's funny because I think that I've told Heather this before. I might have talked about it on the podcast with Heather or you. But I think my biggest kink is my partner's biggest kink, because my biggest kink is like their intense pleasure. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh yeah, let's do that thing. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's very interesting. Just that is like, interesting, what? Especially since you talk about coming from learning to not be detached, and what a better way to be detached from sex than having somebody else do it for you and being able to receive the pleasure in there. Now that's just my little theological insight, not theological. That's biblical. You know what I mean? Theory insight. We'll make this about the Bible. Oh, you don't want to go there with me. I'm positive Jesus got direction. God damn it. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness and now a dominatrix. You do not want to go there with me. We are Bible students. But we're all God's children, even if we're into kinks. We are. Especially if the God is universe, whatever that is. But yeah, so that's like you were talking before about someone who had written a book about how when you're kink. Existential kink. Yes. Yeah. And how when you're kink, when you find out the root of it, heal, if it's, there's traumas attached to it, it's no longer a kink. That, it just popped in my head. I was like, that is actually only if your kink is taboo. Like, not everybody's kink is that feeling of taboo. So I think that's what she's trying to make the kink not taboo to get the issue to go away. She even takes it to the point where it's like, situation, like financial situation. Like if you are always broke or poor, there's some type of, in essence, kink in that situation. Mm-hmm. Right? Or some others might say, you're still addicted to being broke, or you're in a money pattern that you can't get out of. And so she's like, bring it to the light, and now that kink can no longer exist. And what's the sexual charge around it? Yeah. And then that's actually how kink in Tantra
blend together, because when it comes to our kinks, often a lot of times people have kinks that do interrupt their life and are not good, especially if they turn into something that is a perversion. And a perversion, I hate using that word because we've made that word askew, because perversion just means an overt obsession to something that is not commonly sexual. And that's why we'll call somebody who is, looking at things that they shouldn't as a sexual object, we'll call them a pervert, because it's like, oh, how dare you? It's not common. But perversion is, it's when it becomes to this place where it's got control. And that's how we know whether our kinks are healthy or not, is how do you feel after seeing that kink out? Do you feel like, that was great? Or do you feel shame? Do you feel guilt? Do you feel fear? Do you feel yuckiness inside? Is there this that's happening inside of you after you've seen this kink out? If so, then that's in your universe, it's not a healthy kink for you. And when we have control of how kinks are seen out, that's when it falls more into a healthy realm, because we're the ones saying, I'm ready for this kink, rather than the kink telling us when it's ready for us. And, and weighing it with our moral and ethical compass, if it fits within our compass, not a compass we share with others, but our own secret internal compass of what's moral and ethical, then you're good. You're fine. Not all kinks are a sign of trauma or that there's something wrong. I think that's a stigma that we got, that if you like something outside of the norm, then there might be something wrong with you.
Sure.
And it's like, no, that's what we're supposed to be made of. We're all colorful and unique and different. And so is our sexual appetite.
Sure.
If it wasn't for kinks, we'd all be boring.
Yeah, that would be boring.
That would. Just a bunch of missionary style, maybe every now and then a reverse cowgirl. What?
I think missionary came because missionaries would go to preach the word of God and have sex with local people, and that's the position they would have sex in.
No way, I didn't know that.
That's why they called it missionary, because there was no involvement. Don't quote me on all this. You can look it up, but I'm pretty positive that's where it came from. That's why it's called missionaries, because the missionaries would, and then they're preaching the word of God, having whatever. We can get into that,
right.
But that's why, and because it was very boring, very bland sex, because it was so condemned for them. Because in most culture, or the way I would look at things, again, like more Tantra version, it's like, and we may have talked about that, or we've definitely talked about it, but again, it all blends. Men experience, and this is more of the Tantra from my understanding, but men for the most part experience the ejaculation in the energy of that through the penis. They don't necessarily have full body orgasms.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is sad, because you should have them, because they're awesome.
Oh yeah. That's a part of Tantra.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Okay.
Full body orgasm.
Yeah. So the disconnection from that, a lot of the times then women have full body orgasms and experience it through their entire body. So the missionary is basically designed, you're pinned down, I'm on top, and it's just for that. But if you have more control and you have the freedom to move and dance with your body in that term of that, you can have the full body orgasm, right? So that the missionary really wasn't from what I understand, that big of a thing until the missionaries, brought that along.
God doing his work.
Yeah, God doing his work.
Yeah.
We're all God's children. And
it's just going to be our saying. We're all God's children.
All God's children.
It's God here. We're all God's children.
But it makes sense. If I'm laying on my back and, my girlfriend's on top of me, she has the freedom to move and do as she sees fit for that energy to move all through and around her body.
Yeah.
And after, at first when I was younger, I didn't have full body orgasms. Now I do. It's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. And, I think that it's interesting. One of the most interesting things that I learned, because anytime that I'm on top, if you have a woman that's on top, she's not going up and down. She's not trying to get your penis to go in and out of her really fast. Yeah. She's usually kind of doing a grinding and moving and swaying and
like a dance.
Yeah. And that's actually how we're intended more to come together in this union is not the slapping, penetrating. That's porn that's taught us that.
Sure.
Because in porn, what do we want to see? We want to see the action. So how can you see the action if this is what's happening, and you're grinding back and forth? You can't see the penis going in and out. So in porn, we've got to have this in and out going. Now, I don't know if that's exactly where it started, but I can tell you that for porn, they don't want this grinding action unless it's specifically a porn for that.
Skinamax.
I remember Skinamax.
Couldn't see anything. It was all that.
Yeah, it was all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the Red Shoe Diaries. You remember that?
I don't remember that. I just remember the fuzzy lines and trying to watch. That's all I remember. I'm like, I got a titty. Yes.
Yeah. I was watching porn the same way.
And then I was just talking to my buddy. I'm like, man, it's so different today. Like, I mean, you walk down in Miami, you're going to see girls that have less clothes on than what we used to masturbate to as kids.
Yeah.
Like you said, Frederick's of Hollywood. I'm like, oh my God, when that magazine came in the mail, I was like, 9 or 10. I'm like, yes.
And imagine though, if our boys, all right, we're going to hone in on the boys because boys usually get a little more of a disservice when it comes to proper education. Women are usually more violated and have to deal with trauma on top of improper education. Yeah. So if we hone in on our boys, imagine if sex was not so taboo. People were talking about it, but because it's not taboo, we're talking about it in a way that people agree it should be talked about consciously. I mean, if we were talking freely about sex, naturally we're going to have more, more respect when it comes to the subject. If we're talking openly with our parents, openly with our grandparents, openly with our brothers and sisters, we're going to approach it in a much more respectful way. And imagine if that was
openness creates respect. That's a very interesting.
It does. Yeah. It does. It's the same way that, we may talk shitty to ourselves in our mind, but we would never say that to our best friends. We just bring an essence of love and respect on top of it. And so if we were talking openly about sex with those people, our family members, our respected elders of the community or our own little village, instead of just talking about it with our sneaky little friends or not sneaky, you know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying.
But, and not having it being taboo, then our children would hear these conversations much earlier in life and be educated a little bit more in it. And imagine if we didn't make the body so taboo. And when boys saw a woman wearing very little clothing, it wasn't like, oh, how dare she wear that? She's asking for it. It's more of, doesn't she look beautiful?
Yeah.
And end of story. Yeah. I went to a naturalist place, a naturalist resort, about a year ago. I've been in there in and out. And, one of the things that was most fascinating to me, because I've been to nude beaches, typically you're only going to see adults there because of our taboos. But at this naturalist resort, this is family friendly. And, being there and seeing the children running around, seeing teenage boys walking through there, and they're not walking through there with erections the whole time because of all these naked bodies. It's all about what we're training our mind to think of as sexual versus what is just beautiful. Because something that's beautiful can stimulate us. It can bring us arousal, but it's not sexual arousal. If I see a painting that's gorgeous, I'm like, wow, look at that. That's arousal. There's an excitement in my energy. But because it's not taboo, it's a piece of artwork, it's not creating a sexual arousal. I haven't been taught that. But we're teaching boys and girls that their bodies are sexualized so young that naturally, if there's a 15-year-old walking by this window right now with little booty shorts on and her butt hanging out and cleavage showing, I'm sure both of us are just going to instinctively go, how is she wearing that? She's
I'll
too
look the
young.
other way. Yeah.
And even with all the healing we've done and the consciousness that we have, that thought's still there because we are 80s children too.
Also, I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying. I also think there's a level of respect that gets taught there where it's like, I got to think of how to word this.
What I think I'm seeing is that there is a sense of protection that may arise in you of what men are capable of and what other men may be thinking when they see that body, and a part of you may rise up going, I want to protect her from that. She doesn't deserve to have that kind of attention. Correct. I want her to be respected. And the problem that we're getting is, yes, we need to respect ourselves, and whatever that looks like is fine, but we need to learn how to respect other people regardless, and teaching boys, how about you respect the women by understanding that does not need to be sexual, but it's not their fault. They think that because we have programmed them to think that. So now we're shaming 14, 15, 16-year-old boys for getting turned on by the booty shorts, saying you need to respect women, but we're not teaching them how.
Yeah. And yeah. That's interesting.
It's just kind of like a paradox.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking. Yeah, because it's definitely like, I knew there'd be something come up this podcast, and I'm like, this is good.
That's where, I wish that there was more of the talk of sex in the conscious way, because when you learn of sex in the more tantric way, in a way to where we're coming together as souls, we're able to connect each other's energy, and that's the arousal.
Sure.
It's hard to prey upon somebody's energy if they're not willing.
Sure. And the connectiveness. See, that's where I think is interesting. So I think it does. I mean, I definitely don't think it's taught well in school.
No. Oh gosh, no.
It's like, that's not helping anything. And that's where I think having these open conversations of like, it is an energetic exchange. You need to protect your energetic exchange. It doesn't need to be with everybody, and like by being with everybody, are you seeking a void? Or are you trying to, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Or by being with lots of partners, do you just enjoy lots of partners? And that's okay.
Sure. That's also okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just very interesting. The whole topic's interesting because even having the conversation, like I knew I would get uncomfortable during this at some point. And I'm freely willing to admit that makes me uncomfortable because I have a young daughter that I don't really want to dress like that when she's 15. I have no problem saying that because I don't want the other boys looking at her like that.
So I'm curious if she comes out of her room 15 years old and she's got some cleavage showing. She's got her hair done, a little light makeup on.
Yeah.
What's happening inside of you?
The horny 16-year-old me, that you know what I mean? I'm thinking like, oh, I know what I was like when I was 16. I know my only intention is to try and have sex tonight. You know what I mean? That's the thing that comes out, and I'm like, and now she's in school with a bunch of people that are going to, that are like that. Like, damn it. Also,
do you think that maybe there's still a little part of you that feels a little ashamed of that 16-year-old and how horny he was? Was there any parts like that inside?
I mean, I'm sure that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we peel it back with more time, that there's probably something going on in there. I mean, of course there is.
But the crazy thing is
to me, it's like the hormone raging of the 16-year-old that they don't have control of because they haven't been taught correctly and they don't understand. And I'm like, I don't know who this fucking guy's father is. Is he even present? What does he do? What's like to take advantage of the hormone raging girl that's 15 and doesn't, is also trying to, whatever. I mean, I've thought about like how I'm going to handle that. And it's good that you and Heather are in my life. And, but
I'd like to give you an invitation to just a different perspective to look at. Do you trust her to choose a good man? Do you trust her to protect herself? Do you trust her to set solid boundaries? Do you trust her to call you if she's feeling uncomfortable? Those are like,
see, that's what I'm trying to teach now.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of what I was going to step into is the next part of it is how I've thought things through. And she's not at that age that's the relationship I'm attempting to cultivate with her now and how to do that, how to set boundaries, how to do all these things. And that she's in jujitsu and all these things to protect herself physically and emotionally and know to call and know to do all these things to the point where it's like, I'm trying to create, again, attempting because I don't know if I'm doing the best I can to create that environment to where there's open communication at that age to where it's like, hey, this is what I want to wear. Okay. Dad feels this way about it. And I'm allowed to bring that up to you because I'm not saying I'm saying we're having open communication about this.
You're just educating her.
I'm educating you on a new perspective. This makes me nervous. I was a boy. I was 16.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things, like, let's have an open conversation about what's going on, you know, that kind of stuff. And it helps that her mom's on board with things like that. So maybe even if the conversation's more comfortable coming from mom, like, you know, her and I are always kind of on the same page with everything. So it's like, what does that look like? I think the biggest thing is I want open communication for her whole life as best that I possibly can, to where she feels like she can talk to dad about those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because,
or even another trusted person, you know, it doesn't always have to be dad.
No, it doesn't always have to be dad. I would prefer it to be dad, because at least I know where the information's coming from, you know, and that's why, like, I don't want sex to be taboo with her, because I don't want her getting her information from the 15-year-old girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Like, hold on. I have a network of very high level sexual practitioners.
But you know what? Those 15-year-olds also do have? Yeah. They have a network of the web. I mean, they've got a lot of information at their disposal that we did not have. They can actually get a lot of information. I have gotten some pretty good insights from some teenagers and early 20-year-olds. Like, they're so much smarter than we were at that age. They really are.
She's already smarter than me now. Like, I mean, the things she says are just, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm getting life coached by a 7-year-old.
All right.
I'm like, this is crazy.
You know, they don't have wisdom yet, but they have
purity.
They do. And they have a perspective that we couldn't even imagine having.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. And I mean, we're going to have to talk about that topic again, because it does make me uncomfortable. And I have no problem telling people that it makes me uncomfortable, because I don't know the answer. I do know that I feel like my biggest job is to hopefully create an environment where she feels she can always come to me and she's trusted and she's safe. And then there's the part of the father that wants to protect her. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get rid of that part. No, you shouldn't. You know, like, and so it's just know where that part exists the best for serving you and her. Yeah. And that's what I mean, so again, I'm grateful. That protector, when she does call you, bring that protector. Yeah. Show up with the shotgun. Yeah. Don't have to worry about that. Boy, come on over here. Boy, yeah, you know, because that, you know, reaffirms that she's taken care of. Mm-hmm. And also not to be naive to think that, I mean, because you see it all the time. Like, I mean, we were in high school, girls would leave the house in one outfit and they change into another one. Yeah. It's going to do it anyway. Going to do it anyway. So I do want open communication in terms of that. And, you know, I got 10 years to figure that part out, and a lot will change in 10 years, and I'll learn more information. And, you know, you'll be on here a bunch more. Heather will, you know, a lot of the guys that I'm friends with that have been on the podcast will have their daughters that have gone through it and how they navigated it. And I'll be talking about my grandkids going through it. Oh my God, that's going to be crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I'm only 8 years away from having a teenage grandchild. I mean, cool. It's wild. Yeah. And I think you just don't want shame associated with it either. Yeah. It's definitely an interesting topic that, I knew would make it. Yeah. I'm so glad I'm not a parent, like immediate parent anymore. My kids are grown, because man, there's so much more. Oh my God. There's just a lot more to worry about. The playbook for parenting just keeps growing and growing, which is great. But I mean, you know, parenting was a full-time job before the rule book grew so much. Well, I mean, and that's kind of like the other part. It's like, you know, what did my grandparents have to worry about? My mom sneaking out of the house, smoking some weed and a cigarette and having sex. Like, that was kind of like, oh no. Yeah. Don't do that. You know what I mean? But that was also the end of the world for parents then. It was. Their kid was going to go damnation or go to hell, or, sure. You know, the idea of them doing that is just like all the things that we can come up with that our children can get in trouble with. But we are also more informed because of the internet. Sure. You know, there's a lot more information. Yeah. So that does play into it. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. All right, let's see. So, do we want to, we got about 10 minutes ish, okay. 7 minutes. I want to talk about the online workshops I'm doing. Yeah. Let's talk about the online workshops. Let's talk about your teaching. Let's talk about all that stuff where I know we told people like where they could, how to find practitioners, I think last time, but let's talk more about your stuff for the last 7 minutes. Yeah. Cause when I found the mentors that I do, I'm very lucky. But there's not a lot out there when it comes to having a formal education, semi-formal education in kink, in BDSM. And so, you know, I've started doing online workshops, you know, so it's easy for everybody. And I'm doing ones where it's an introduction to your kinks, unleash the kinkster inside of you. It's a guide from a beginner's perspective
And in that, I teach what are these hormones that we're playing with inside of our body when we're going through a scene? What kind of traumas may come up in a scene? We go through processing through them and give people at least the core amount to process through any triggers that show up to create bond between the two rather than distance between and a loss of trust to form that stronger. And taking them through, what is a dominant? What is a submissive? What are the different toys? How do you dominate somebody? We do a fun interactive like text domination back and forth.
Okay.
And I give them suggestions if they wanted to platonic type of texting back and forth, depending on who their partner is, or if they want romantic, making love letters and candlelit dinners, or if you want to go sadistic. And I've got a long list when it comes to, I'm more of the sadistic type. And I have different suggestions of things you can text them. One of my favorite was, I had one of my submissives, he was misbehaving a lot. And so I told him to get an ice cube and place the ice cube on his tongue and video record that ice cube melting. And he could not shut his mouth until the ice cube was completely melted. And he was such a masochist. He got an ice cube as big as his mouth. I mean, I don't even know how he got it in there. Just plopped the whole thing in. The video was over an hour long of that ice cube slowly melting. But and that was done through text, like fun interactive stuff like that. And then I am going further and offering in-person trainings for those who are able to come into the area to where we have a full day where you're able to be in scenes and play out scenes and kind of play with all the toys and implements that I have and, in my BDSM room. And then I also am starting a online professional domination course that I'm going to be launching this summer.
Awesome.
So for those who want to get into the actual professional work of domination, male or female, I'll be giving a course on that. We don't have necessarily professional submissives because it's not something you ever want to allow yourself to get into, chained up by somebody you don't know that's paying you to submit. No, don't ever do that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. You always want to be the one in control.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that I have coming up because, these are the things that I wished I could have gone to. And, if you can't find it, be it. And so we're just going to bring that out. But I'm also offering my in-person sessions that I always do and also through Zoom. Trying to have a lot more things going on. I'm part of Turn On Miami, which is a fun event that they have in Miami where you can come and enjoy the sensory play that happens in there, but it's not like a swingers type of thing. It's very, just more of demonstration, and a little bit of participation. So lots of fun things coming up. I just wanted to kind of give me a little plug in there about my online stuff because I have that, and I'm going to be doing that on rotation. So there's going to be a course every month or every other month. There's going to be a new course out so that you can take them.
I think people are always interested to learn more about this, and doing it that way is kind of from the safety of your own home is a nice thing. Cool. All right. So find that at CasaundraHope.com.
Yep. CasaundraHope.com. You can find all my stuffs.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. We'll do it again.
You.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Bye.